Hi, I'm Nathan, and you're listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast. Family relationships can be messy, especially in the queer community, but the concept of a chosen family has become such a cornerstone of safety, love, and belonging for our community. And if you're someone who's struggled with the complexities of family dynamics, and let's face it, everyone has, this episode is for you because we are sitting down with one of the brightest lights in queer talent, the incredible J. Harrison Ghee, a Tony Award-winning actor, singer, and dancer who you may know from their performances in Some Like It Hot, Kinky Boots, and so many more. But the reason that they're here today is they are someone whose story I've gotten to know personally, and it's been one that's been so inspiring just in the way that they've been able to navigate and maintain their family relationships without compromising the beautiful, unique human that they are, and doing it with so much grace and being a human that they are proud of. And I don't know how many people can say that. Are you proud of the human that you are? Question that you can ponder while you sit back and listen up. Jay, welcome to the Queer Conscious Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
Yeah. So, Jay, what is bringing you joy these days?
Oh, what is bringing me joy these days? Truly the reminder of connection, of queer family, setting boundaries is bringing me a lot of joy.
Say more
And
about the boundaries.
listen, standing firm and setting boundaries is it's not an easy thing to do. And I don't know what it's like. I mean, I guess it's a part of human experience that, like, if it came with ease, it wouldn't, like, what's the point? Um
Yeah.
but I've really had to communicate my needs and my desires to people very clearly recently. Um, and I'm grateful to have to be like, okay, let's have uncomfortable conversations. Let's shake things up. Let's remember that there are other ways to exist and to expand and to find depths of relation.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's really why I invited you on this podcast. I see you as someone who not just lives in so much joy and authenticity, but someone who also embraces connection and the difficulties and complexities of those connections. And yeah, so with your family, your queer family, and boundaries is just part of that. And I'm curious, Jay, what does queer family mean to you?
Mm. It's a chosen thing. It's an even deeper connection because you choose to have those people in your life. You set the boundaries, you set the tone, and it is such a support system that is, I mean, based in necessity a lot of times.
Mm.
As queer people, we're often, not always, but often disconnected or not as connected to our biological family. And so we find that community and that safety and that love from people that we find along our journey, and building that family is something quite special.
There's so much power in that choice that you're talking about, and not just in who you're choosing, but how you set boundaries in those relationships to serve you. And then there's also this element of necessity that you're talking about. Where does that necessity come from, do you think?
I mean, it's human nature to want to connect with others. And so if you don't get that love from your biological family and from the people that you are, like, DNA linked to connect to, then your natural instinct is to go, well, where is my clan? Who are the people that, like, teach me, who mold me, who help me grow, who help me expand? Um, yeah, so I think it's just it's a human need to have that
Yeah.
community and that connection.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the biological family. So obviously, I've heard a little bit about your biological family, but why don't you tell me what has the journey been in your family in that relationship?
It's been an interesting journey. I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is a military town, college town, and not much else there. My dad was an administrator at the university. and a pastor at a missionary Baptist church. And I had one older brother who's 7 years older, and then my mom. And I mean, we've always had a loving, general, loving family. And of course, the like picture of the pastor and his family was just like, geez. And then growing up, I'd watched people play a lot of roles. Again, going into church, church is one big drag show. It's everybody puts on their, the finery and the things and the like, and then people act up at church. And that's what I've just noticed my entire life, or I definitely was taking notes at all of these characters. And I noticed how people respond to queerness or otherness at an early age. And so I felt that there was like so much wrong in me, or I saw people responded to it in others. So I just kind of like went along to get along. And
And
then
how are they responding to you?
quite literally, like I had family members, my dad, I had my uncle, like, you don't do that, boys, don't do that. Or don't literally like things of like, don't stand with one leg like, out. Like, it's like little things that you're worried about the way I'm standing because somebody will perceive me a certain way. Or like at a football game, I love to dance to the band and like do cheerleading jumps. And like, that was what I was paying attention to, as well as the football game. And there were comments from my father who was like, I bet you want to go put a little skirt on. And I'm like, what if I do? It's fabric. Like, why is there a negative connotation if that was my desire? But again, I picked up on those things very early on. And when I brought them up later in conversation with family, it was flippant in this way of like, oh, I didn't say that. Or if I did, I don't remember. It was kind of like, whatever. And you're like, of course it was whatever to you because it didn't impact you and who you are. You thought it was a throwaway, as opposed to you're actually making a mark on you're making an impression on me about myself.
Yeah, because to them they're just following the rules of the church and society. But you, as a queer person who is young, what was that mark that it did leave on you?
Again, it made me play small or hide parts of myself to my family and everyone. It was like, okay, great. So I'll dress up and play with blankets as trains and dresses and fashion shows when I'm home by myself and nobody's around.
Yeah, it's almost weird to think about because when I see you and your performances on stage and the fabrics that you wear out in the streets, like that's that's not that little boy. At what point did you just stop caring about all that?
I mean, it took a journey. And it's funny because I say that like I like hid myself completely, but like because I still wasn't not myself. Like I went in the backyard and was the entire marching band by myself in the like windows of our back in our like we had these sliding glass doors and I used them as my reflection, like my mirror. And I knew my family could see me from inside, but I was in my own world outside, like disassociating from them and creating fantasy and imagination and being all these things. But I also knew how they viewed me while I did it. And so it always lived there, but it was just like, okay, I'll just do it over here to myself. And so now there's this intention of it of like, I engage with them more intentionally. I FaceTime them all the time in makeup and dresses and things and normalize the understanding like, okay, this isn't a character I'm playing on stage. This isn't somebody I'm like doing in a production. This is me. This is who I am. I enjoy this. This is normal to me.
Do you think it's become normalized now with your family?
I mean, every day they're still learning, but they definitely get over it. Like it's not like even these blonde brows. My mom recently was like, "You look like an alien," and I was like, "Yes, I am out of this world."
Thank you. Yeah, superstar, alien.
I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not."
Uh-huh.
And my mom oftentimes will say like, "Hey, where's that little boy who used to put out my dryer for me when I did my hair and put out my magazine and my footstool? Like, where's that little?" And I'm like, "That person still exists, but that person has also evolved." And that person
Wait,
is also
what does she mean by that? Where is that little boy?
she. I mean, again, it's like in her head, just that little boy, the little helper, the little like this little loving. I'm like that being is still there. The human has not changed, but like the expansion and the understanding of my existence has expanded. Like she just wants me to be this little boy, and I'm like, well, I'm much more than that, and I always have been, but y'all never acknowledge the fullness of me.
And do you think that she can't see that helper in you, that one that is so kind and sweet to her because of how you choose to do your eyebrows, how you choose to dress? Do you think that affects her ability to see that?
It's like a short in her circuit. It just like she gets it a lot, but then sometimes she just goes back and is like, why can't you just like put on a t-shirt and some jeans and like be normal? Or like why do you have to like paint and do all of that? I'm like, well, it's because it's who I am. It's
That's
what I love. It's how I express myself. It's how I inspire others. It's how I am efficient in the world. It's like if you taught me, I mean, we'll get into it more, but it's like I always go back to them of the things they laid in my foundation, which is faith and believing. And so I'm like, well, if I'm using the Christ-like model and I'm supposed to use the gifts I've been given, one of my gifts is like I know how to be the face and put a look together. That is a part of my superpowers.
yeah,
Not everybody
yeah.
is able to do it the way that I can for myself. And like, no, this is in the arsenal of the gifts God gave me to use in this world.
Mm. And really speaking on that too, your dad was a minister, and you talk a lot about your ministry and what that means. So I mean, you're talking about these gifts that you use. What is your ministry, and how has it changed or evolved over the years?
I walk in a ministry of intention, purpose, and love. Like I literally got it tattooed on me. That's the first thing I've ever, my first tattoo, because it meant so much to me. Of like, oh, look, these are truly the like pillars of what I live by: intention, purpose, and love.
Yeah,
Doing
and
things.
can we slow that down? Intention, purpose, and love. Like each one of those words. Like what do those mean to you?
Yeah, I do everything in life with intention. I'm very intentional with just about. I try to be with everything I do. As the
Mm-hmm.
TikTok says, very mindful, very cutesy.
Yeah, very
Very
cutesy.
demure, which is also wild
Uh,
because it's like she's like very demure, and all of my friends are like, "Girl, you were the original demure," because my drag name is Crystal Demure.
oh my gosh.
So they're like,
Yeah.
"You," but nonetheless, I do everything with intention. Like even how I dress every day, like the scents I put on. They have like a lot of them have names, and I will like I'm very intentional about what I put on and how I dress myself. I love one of the scents I had was literally called Possibilities, and I love to dress myself with possibilities every day. So intentionally interacting and engaging with everything and making
Yeah.
sure that it's within my purpose, the purpose I've been put on this life to be Black queer joy on this earth. And I do it all with love. I try to activate and engage my love in everything that I do. So it's just like that's what I live by. That is my ministry.
Ah, I love that. So to be Black queer joy on this earth and to do it with love, is there a way to not do that with love? Like I almost can't even imagine the opposite of that.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't be. Yeah, you can't do that without love. Like that is the foundation for every bit of it. Like it is,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that's what
But
my
what does that
mom.
mean to you to do it with love?
I like again in an extension of that. One of my superpowers is like I know that I make people feel seen.
Yeah.
Quite often, people will always share with me, and then they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, I don't know why I let that out, or why I said that, or why I felt compelled." And I'm like, "It's okay. I have that effect on people." And like
Mm.
that allowance, that permission to let people be themselves and just let it be like I love recently people have always or have said like, "Oh, sorry, I'm weird." And I'm like, why is weird a bad thing? Or
Yeah.
you're just
Why are
being
you
you.
yeah, why are you apologizing for that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really that permission to just like to just be and to continue to make space for people to feel seen
Mhm.
is like how I do everything with love. It's just like, okay, great. And also remembering how to protect myself while doing that. Of like, I don't have to exert myself in a way that is like draining or that it is a weight. I mean, I've had to come to this place. I definitely have taken on a lot of things, but I'm like, all right, I don't have to. I can like
Mm.
interact and also protect my peace at the same time.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So to live in this queer Black joy, to do it with love so that other people feel seen in who they are, where they don't have to feel embarrassed about their uniqueness or weirdness. That's your ministry. And that word too, I was surprised the first time I heard you say that word. I'm like, ministry. I'm like, oh, like what is this? It felt very religious and kind of icky to me. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it does. we're told that like queerness and spirituality, they can't exist together.
Yeah.
We are conditioned to understand that it's like, no, God does not like. I'm like, well, if God does not like, why am I created this way? And at least for me and my understanding, long before Christianity was given to us as Black people, before we came here to America, there were other things we were connected to spiritually. And like, I haven't even done like the like in-depth research of it to really like find the roots of it for myself. But the connectivity that I feel and understand for myself is like, oh no, I have superpowers. And I normalize saying that to my family too, of like, hey, no, no, no. We talk about signs, wonders, and miracles that, if we are believers and have faith and all these things, that can look like more than the limits we put on God.
Mm.
Because even in our belief, we still limit it to being like, it can't be done that way because like God wouldn't do it that way. But like, you don't know for sure. That's not how faith works.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think part of the ickiness for me, that word, I think I relate it so much to the evangelical upbringing that I had. There's some of the hate, and where I've had to reevaluate my relationship with God and spirituality. And I don't use that word anymore, but for you to really reclaim that, I think is really powerful. How has your connection to spirituality changed over the years?
Ooh, it's continuing to evolve. And I use my own barometer and my own gauge of like every single day. I created a physical altar that I go to every morning. Um,
Mm.
and that continues to grow, continues to evolve. I've got a meditation book, Pocket Full of Miracles, that has like daily practices and seed thoughts and uses all kinds of beliefs and practices from around the world. And I'm lighting Palo Santo and crystal and sage. And my mom is like, who are you praying to? And I'm like, again, if God is in everything and all things, and we're supposed to like be thankful and like make sacrifices and do the, I'm like, I'm doing what it just looks differently than what you know it to be. I'm
Yeah.
finding what makes sense for me and the understanding that everybody's spiritual walk is an individual thing. And that all we're seeking is the God in me celebrates the God in you. And
Mm.
the ministry,
Namaste.
like truly the ministry, everyone has their own ministry where you are most effective in the world. It is the thing where you are like, you shine and people connect to you of like, oh, all right. Like in your queer journey and your exploration of queerness and connectivity and community, you are ministering in your own way. You're connecting beings through understanding, through so many layers and levels of healing. And we've all got our own ministry. We're all doing our
Mm.
thing that makes us the most powerful and the most like bright.
And it feels like you really found that, Jay. Like, just again, the intention, purpose, and love, that ministry that you found is your expression of your spirituality and your purpose. But I imagine that probably caused some differences with you and your family, how you relate to spirituality, especially again, your dad being a minister. What do you think was the biggest challenge you and your family had to overcome together?
Mm. I think we just got to it is trusting that there is safety. Like we assume that because we are blood related, that we're supposed to just have this relation and it's a like we get each other and it's just easy. But it's like, oh no, we have to build trust as adults. Like we have to like stand in our individuality and we are finding that like, oh right, we've got to really build the safety for our relationship.
Mhm.
And that requires transparency and openness. And from my perspective, my family hasn't been given those tools as individuals. I watch all of us struggle with like interacting now to be like, this is where I am now. How do I get you to understand me in this place or in this moment without offending you?
Mhm.
And also not using old tools or old coping mechanisms to get my point across. Like I catch my mom all the time is so quick to negatively respond without like intending to be negative. It's always this like put down or this like, what? And you're like, wait, 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 wait. You're doing that because somebody did it to you. You've always been told to stay in your place or be quiet. And so like now that's your conditional way of responding to things or you shut down. And it's like, Okay, but we can also create a place of safety that like you can share your heart and not feel like I'm gonna stomp all over it.
Well, and it's interesting that building that safety and trust, how important that is to build that. You said it takes transparency, and it's almost like we wait for there to be safety and trust before we want to be transparent, right? Because it's way more vulnerable that way. So how do you go about being transparent with your family when you don't necessarily feel that trust and safety there?
I try to use this with everyone is operating from a conscious sensitivity. The awareness that every human being brings whatever experience they've had in their life to every situation. Everything you've gone through in your life has brought you to this moment. And I have to be conscious and sensitive to the fact that, like, you may make a face that has nothing at all to do with something I said and about me, but all to do with your own experience.
Yeah. Well, so let's take your mom for instance. What are some things from her background that you try and bring into that conscious sensitivity?
The awareness that, like, that woman was a part of some of the first integrated schools in North Carolina. I want to say she was a teenager going into like her first integrated school. Like, that alone in her, like in your mental scape of things, like growing up picking tobacco and cotton before going to school in the morning. Like she was telling me recently, they would pick like 100 pounds to get $3. To know that this Black woman has grown up in her life apologizing for her existence and playing small, and at 71 is still uncomfortable with like little things of like, oh, I'm taking you on a trip for your birthday. Oh, is this okay? Can I do this? Is this in the butt? Like still asking for permission. And I'm conscious of that in every response she gives to me. In her interaction with me, I'm aware of the fullness of her life. I know these things about her, but even I have to have that same conscious sensitivity with people I don't know. Oh, I've got to give you grace. You have no idea of like my experience, and I have no idea of your experience, but I can give you enough grace to say like, okay, cool. Let's meet here in this moment and now and respectfully interact.
So that just feels like such a powerful place to engage with people. And grace was the word I was gonna say. I was like, that feels very gracious of that person and their entire complexity, their history, what they've been through. It's so beautiful. And then yet I have to ask, how do you still have grace for yourself and who you are and not diminish your experience in the midst of conflict?
Again, starting my day off at the altar is always the first because it really is. It's that thing that grounds me in the morning to just check in. I always say the Lord's Prayer. Then I say a prayer that I created myself. And then I repeat the lyrics of a song that my friends, they're a girl group called the Shandellas, and they have a song called The Lullaby. And I repeat these words to myself usually 3 times. I am what God made, beautiful and brave. Every fiber of me is perfectly lovely. I will be myself today.
And what does that do for you to be able to do that every morning? Where does that put you?
It reminds me that, like, okay, every part of me is just as it should be. Let whoever, however wants to show up today be the fullness of how I show up.
Yeah.
Like when I go to get dressed, I'm like, all right, what's the vibe today? How do I feel like existing in the world? There are oftentimes I'll finish getting dressed and look at myself in the mirror and be like, oh, I'm gonna get some looks today. But I don't care. I can't care because it's like I got dressed for me. If you like it, you're welcome.
Yeah. It feels like you showing up in a place where you love yourself, you accept yourself every morning, reminding yourself of that love allows you to shed any insecurity that might get in the way of you being able to have this conscious sensitivity with your mother, your father, whomever in your family, and probably beyond that too, because I think it's really easy to take things personally when you get a look from your parents or that comment, that microaggression. You're just like, okay, can you not? Like, how many times do I have to tell you? Like, that's rooted in homophobia. Um,
Yeah.
but for you to just remind yourself how much you love yourself every single day, it's powerful.
And again, it is that thing that grounds me in being able to have the conversations and be uncomfortable. That's how growth happens. To be like, hey, I have found within myself, and I usually in that meditation time Or, I mean, I feel like I'm constantly in the state of meditation and just like contemplating life and things. And it's like, oh no, I've spent time with myself enough to know that this isn't just like a feeling I'm having today. And even if it is, it's like honor that, respect that. But let me communicate what I have come to understand for myself.
Mm,
And then also give me the grace that that could change.
yeah. Yeah.
Because
And there's a lot
we
of,
want to lock everything in and be so definitive and like be able to compartmentalize and be like, okay, I made sense of that. I put a title on it and I put it over there. So like that's where that stayed, as opposed to allowing fluidity and like flow to happen.
fluidity in it, and it almost sounds like in that there is just room for complexity, not just within yourself, but within other people. There's a lot of grace that you have for just this complicated life experience. And I think that detachment from those boxes really allows you to feel powerful and trusting. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, truly. Going back to even just the simple blonde brow, it started as a, a thing I did for the Met Gala. And then I was like, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to try. I've always wanted to dye my hair and do things. I'm going to keep it. And it became efficient for work because then I could just paint over them for, during the show. But then also this thing of being like, oh, right. Before that comment my mom made about like, you look like an alien, I would have taken that personal and it would have been this like thing I would have mulled over and be like, okay, I have to put it back. My mom she can't, this makes her uncomfortable. I'm like, this is a brow. But instead it was like, oh, thank you. I am an alien. I am something out of this world. I am other. I always have been. Thank you for identifying that.
Yeah. And you just own it.
That's not a bad thing.
And now let's shift here from your biological family into this queer chosen family that you've been talking about. How do you even go about finding queer family?
I'm a seeker of truth and joy and freedom at all times. And so I feel like that becomes a magnet of like, then the people are attracted to you. They find you almost. It's not like I go out and I have to find these people and I'm like on this mission. I have picked up people along the way that I'm like, oh, you get me, you see me in a way, you understand the quality of me, you understand the heart of me. I see that in you, and we can like aid each other in this journey. Because even then, I've had with my queer family conversations where I'm like, hey, we don't have to use that. I know in queer culture, this is common. However, we can grow past this. This humor no longer serves us. We don't have to read each other like this. I love you. And I can just say that as opposed to like needing to, because again, that was out of
Yeah,
necessity before of like, well,
for
if we can
sure.
read each other down, then like, nobody else can come for us.
For
And you're like,
sure.
yes, but we could also just actually love each other.
Wow. You said you live in truth and joy, you're a seeker of truth and joy, and just by living that, you attract people. And like to people listening to this podcast, what are examples of that? What are some things that people can do to really live in their truth and their joy and start attracting people that are like-minded?
Yeah, finding spaces where, like, again, do things that earnestly bring you joy. I'm blessed that in my career, I get to go into spaces that, like, I choose the work that I do. And so, in the work that I choose, again, operating with intention and purpose and love, I'm like, in this character, in this role, do I find parts of truth in myself that I can latch on to? I'm really seeking roles that, like, unearth things for me and see how this person interacts with the other characters, and then trust that the people I'm aligning with creatively have created a space that is safe to play in, that I will along the way find common ground and common folks. And I have to do shows like Kinky Boots, to do, Some Like It Hot, to do Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, these moments that I have really found people who I'm like, yep, you sticking with me forever. Or like
Yeah.
these people who have
Wow.
seen me through so much. Like Kinky Boots I was in therapy every day, just like pouring my heart out, having breakdowns on stage.
Mm,
And there were
mm,
people traveling the world with me, having similar experiences, or being the system of like, I see you, friend, I got you. Or seeing these
mm,
moments of hardship with my family as I'm like, oh, they don't know I do drag, and how do I tell them while I'm traveling the world in this tour that like this is actually something I do outside of it. Like people have seen me and we like communicate and talk about these moments and not just like sweep
Well,
them under the rug.
it almost astounds me like just how much intention you put into every decision. So just from the gigs that you pick up, from even the occupation that you have and the outfits that you wear and the background that you've chosen today for this podcast, which perfectly matches your outfit and is just so warming of the heart and like everything. There's so much intention in that. And it feels like you really just know yourself.
I allow myself to find myself every day and not to wake up like, oh, I'm the same I was yesterday. It's like, how do I take yesterday and now add to that
Mm,
or
yeah.
go beyond that or leave space
Wow.
for something more than I know to be possible?
To find yourself every day. And then, okay, this is the perfect segue now to talk about what you just mentioned about this idea of reading and how that serves us at one point to be able to like be a little catty and say those insults back. And part of your truth and accepting who you are that day is like, do we really need this? Can you just say a little bit more about that shift and mindset for you?
Yeah, one of my dearest friends, like again, we were did the Kinky Boots tour together, so we have now solidly known each other a decade. Like literally this time 10 years ago, we were like going to Vegas to open the show. And before we left New York, we sat down and were like, hey, you know, if we're gonna share rooms on the road and become friends, just so you know, this is how I live, this is how I operate, so don't take this personally. And not we just like laid out our boundaries. And I had never done that with somebody, just been so like frank. And along the tour and in our friendship, it became normal for us to just like pick at each other or just do these like jabs. And it just was always this thing. And I got to a point where I was like, that no long, I don't appreciate that, especially in specific areas like focus of energy and like me needing to be better and this and you. And it's like, or I can also just support you on your journey and you can support me on mine. And we don't have to like keep somebody down or like poke at this thing. We can just love each other. And they heard me. They were like, you're right. That is a coping mechanism for me. This is a thing. And this is, you know, and it was a moment of transparency and for us to grow. But it was just for me learning like, mm, there were things that used to be okay that I'm just not okay with.
Yeah, and I love that again, that graciousness to understand why that behavior was there. And for them to recognize it's a coping mechanism for them, but also just for the queer community in general, like the historical need for it to be able to read someone up and down like that is so important to acknowledge and then to look forward and be like, you know what would it be even better is if we just supported each other and like truly loved each other. That's the queer community I want to create.
And we're not going to be perfect at it. It's not going to be like this, like we're angels and we're just like walking love and peaches and cream and it's fluffy
Kumbaya.
strawberry. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
No.
it's like, yes, reading is fundamental. Have your tools, girl. Have your tools sharpened. But like, know that that doesn't have to be the baseline and we don't have to live in that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I can also just really like champion you to be your best self instead of calling out your weaknesses. Oh no, actually, how can I be a better support in your life? Again, how can the God in me celebrate the God in you? Like
Mm.
we're just trying to like hype each other's light. So like, let me fan your flame.
Yeah. Uh, I love that. I love that so much. You know, obviously all families have their challenges. Aside from that situation, are there any other challenges that you've experienced with queer family that have stuck out to you?
I mean,
Sounds like a good story there.
well, it's just again, it is linked into the divisiveness amongst our even just beyond queer family, queer community of how we won't see each other in our fullness. Of quite oftentimes, I am learning in my non-binary experience, people will just kind of like dismiss it or like not even acknowledge it in a lot of ways. Of I was playing Lady Chablis in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and I knew ahead of time that people would have feelings about me playing this trans woman because they see one thing and they have compartmentalized and are responding conditionally. But then again, do you know me and have you taken time to understand me as a being or even met me where I am now as opposed to where I was? Okay, I've come to a place in my life where I'm like, again, if we want to use the basic definition of things, we're all trans beings. We transition through being every single day. You are not molecularly the same human you were yesterday. And if we're fighting for equality and fighting for unity in humanity, I'm like, well, that's the heart of the matter that I'm trying to get to. And I'm like, great, very trans, proud to be. And that does not look binarily how we accept it to be. And even in our own community, we keep ourselves so compartmentalized.
Well, it's I can't help but notice that it's almost so similar to your mom trying to box you into this little boy that she knew that was so helpful, and that the queer community, we also do that to each other. Oh, this is what non-binary, this is what trans looks like. And it's just boxes.
Yeah. That we check and that we like accept. And we're like, okay, well, I have to be this for the sake of other people. And I'm like, oh no, that can look like however I desire it to look. And even more, talk about queer family, that same friend who I was like, we don't have to read each other. We along our friendship, I'd always be like, well, I'm attracted to all guys being. They're like, no, you're gay. You're gay. You don't like girls. You don't like. I'm like, no, I love all of God's creatures. I have been with women. I have also expanded and been with all kinds of humans. So I'm like, you can't tell me who I am. And they had to come to a point where they apologized. They were like, I'm sorry, I never accept. And they would. I mean, they were like adamant that like, no, no, you're gay. We don't like. It was just like this hard. It was always a shutdown. And
And like
and then
that's
it
like
was
the point of queerness. Like we're here to expand what it means in terms of gender and sexuality, who we're attracted to, how we express ourselves. Like that's the point of queerness. And so to continue limiting ourselves and say, "Oh, you're only gay. You're only allowed to like men," is crazy to me.
and the idea that like a human existence has to stay stagnant. That like again, once I put a label on you, you're in that box, and that does not change. You can still be in the same box, and that evolves, that becomes more fluid. There has hues and colors to it. Like we have to allow space for evolution. That like as human beings, we are going to change every single day, minute to minute. But we keep these limits and these caps of like, okay, great. This is how you're successful. This is how you are prosperous in the world. This is where you as a queer person can get to or be or think. And you're like, why are you limiting me? Why are you telling me that like this is where the road ends when I could clearly see that there are like so many other ways to do this?
And the beautiful part of this is that you don't allow it to limit you. And I think you've done that with your spirituality, your spiritual practice every day, waking up in the morning. You've done that with setting boundaries and asserting those and communicating. Is there any other way that you felt that you've been able to navigate these challenges with your biological family, your queer family, or just conflict in general? Is there any other way you've done that?
I mean, acupuncture has been a great tool that like support. Truly, like I'm telling you, the work I have done with my acupuncturist, we literally have been like, okay, we did some ancestral healing today. We tapped into some things. That man has put needles all over my body, and we have had some healing. Um, Wonderful tool. I've had a wellness coach that has given me a lot of great tools of expanding my own thinking and really just clarifying and being more specific and intentional, even more so than I could have been imagined for myself.
Yeah. So that deeper healing, it sounds like the healing of addressing the past and just letting that go, shedding that, but also creating the future with intention.
Yeah, yeah. Look, the session we did, oh God, how many years ago was that now at this point?
Was that 2020?
I think it was. God, so wild. Like those tools of being like being able to like zoom out, be above the timeline. Those are all things that have been like, okay, grab that, add that to the arsenal, make that, infuse that into, find ways to like really use all of these things to just keep like compounding on them.
Yeah. It's a lot of tools, lots of healing, reminding yourself that you love yourself every day, boundaries. What other advice would you have for people who are just struggling with family and queer family?
One of the things, a recent revelation, I guess I'll say for myself, is also the understanding that when you're creating a blueprint that doesn't exist, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. It's like you started asking the question, what brings you joy? It's like I spark that in people because I want them to think about the things that bring you joy and then find ways to add to that every day of your life. You got to give yourself the permission to be all of the things you desire to be and to seek all of the things you desire to seek. And then that becomes a magnet of attraction of the things you desire. It really does snowball in this way that you're like, oh, wow, okay, right. Because I followed through with this desire I had or this thing that really like sparks me and uplifts me. I found, and this moment happened, and this came to me, and that, and it really does begin to just like multiply in your life. And before you know it, you're like, ah, wait, how did I get here with this whole crew of people that like really comes through for me? Oh, because I'm seeking joy.
I always tell people what you focus on expands. And when you ask me that question, I think you're like, yeah, I stopped asking people how they're doing anymore. I just start asking what's bringing you joy, because yeah, it's true. What you focus on really just amplifies. I mean, you can start recognizing, hey, this is something that's bringing me joy, and I want more of this. You're going to
Yeah,
bring more attention to creating and cultivating that. And it sounds like that's something that's really helped you connect you to your truth and help you live with that intention and that purpose and love that you do so well. And which is why I invited you on this podcast. And I'm so grateful. This has been an amazing conversation. Yeah, is there anything else that we need to discuss today to help our viewers understand queer family or their journeys?
you have to surrender to the understanding that like, oh, right, this hasn't been done before. I'm grateful to be in this place in my life that I couldn't see as a kid growing up in North Carolina. I didn't see this queer existence. I like literally didn't see it and couldn't fathom it. So like the moments of being on the train in a maxi dress and a full beat and like bag on the arm and just like living my queer life, I'm like, oh, wow. 6-year-old me on the swing disassociating from my family because I was like, the mess that's around here. Like, could not have painted that picture. Me getting a Tony Award for a role that like reached so many hearts and minds and like really shifted things for people is why I was literally sitting there banging on the Tony on stage, like, oh wow, this is oh wait, mom, wait, okay. But it's that thing of being like, all right, I kept allowing myself to be uncomfortable, to move to New York at 18, to like do things that my family were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not 100% sure, but this feels right. So I'm gonna just go follow this.
Yeah, what a beautiful thought of that 6-year-old boy, that just being able to look at you and see all that you've accomplished and just know that the discomforts along the way and that trust in yourself, that trust in your truth have gotten you here.
It's
That's powerful.
it even more so though. It's like I had a moment at the closing of Midnight in Chicago. So many cast members and crew members were just like, saying their goodbyes and they're like, oh, it's been wonderful working with you and like, thank you. And what punched me in the gut and literally like knocked me at one point, you might as well have like popped a water balloon because I just like burst in the middle of this lobby, was just like another question I've asked people recently is, are you proud of the human being you are? Not what you've accomplished, great things. I've gotten great things in life. But what socked me in my stomach was like, oh, I'm the person I always dreamed of being, who is loving, who is caring, who like makes space for people, who again allows people to feel seen, who inspires, who like pours into people. And like to get that love literally reflected back to me, I was like, who cares about a Tony or a Grammy or a thing? I was like, this is what I care about, that people are moved by their interaction with me, that they're like, thank you. You showed me what was possible. You gave me glimpse into like hope and something more than what I thought could exist.
Jay, thank you so much for sharing your light. If anyone wants to follow you or stay updated on your journey, how can they get in contact with you or follow that?
I'm on all of the socials at J Harrison G. Um, my website should be launching soon, and that's jharrisong.com. So follow me there. And there are exciting things ahead, and I'm excited to just continue this journey of expansion, intention, purpose, and love.
Well, thank you, Jay, and I will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Queer Conscious Podcast, where we explore how love feeds us, heals us, and gives us life. I'm your host and queer love coach, Nathan Serrato. But remember that the conversations that we're having here today are not a replacement for working with a licensed therapist, professional coach, or mental health practitioner. These conversations are for entertainment and education purposes only. But if you are dealing with some big challenges and you're thinking about seeking some professional support, it is one of the most empowering things that you can do for yourself. You can visit queerconscious.com for more information on how to do that. Now, if you love today's episodes and you want more episodes like this, I need your help. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help me to bring you more high quality content and interviews. So until then, take care of yourself and don't forget to let love in.